There's a saying that girls rule the world. Because it's Women's History Month, I'm going to say women rule the world. And we take part in that by the various things that we're engaged in. You know, some single parents, some business owners, some professionals, some whatever you are. You're a woman and you should be celebrated. This episode is entitled I Am Woman, and I welcome you. Welcome to Hidden Parts of the Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Monet, and today, as we celebrate Women's History Month, I would be remiss if I didn't have a guest here to talk about the countless ways that we as women have strived, thrived, and maintain our excellence. Our special guest is Deborah Mason. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here with you.
So it's Women's History Month.
Yes. And for me, Women's History Month is, well, actually, it is all year.
We just get a month.
But women hold it down for the world. And a lot of times, we are not honored in that way. And patriarchal societies and male domination has a tendency to try to push us down, make us be quiet, but still we hold down the family, we support the family, and then we go out in the world and do what we have to do in the world and come back home and continue to do the family. So it's a cycle. But a lot of times men have the opportunity, so they think, to be worldly, and that's all they do. And when they come home, they're not interested in the dishes or the helping with the homework or all the things that holds the world together.
Yeah, and we're not man bashing or anything.
Oh no, not at all.
It's our month, so we get to get on our soapboxes.
Right, and we get to say that that is the way the world has worked for such a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And even as we say we're in 2024, it still goes on.
It does, but we've come a long way.
Absolutely.
So in terms of history, I know maybe, let's go back 60 years. And the landscape 60 years ago versus now has changed so much. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. 60 years ago, I'll say, people were expressing what they weren't happy with. So there was a lot of civil rights protests, and during the time there were laws changing where segregation was changing to integration, and that was a hard struggle. And then as we got toward the 70s, then there was women's liberation. And
so let me just stop you right there before we get to the 70s.
Okay.
The woman's role.
The woman's role.
Obviously was kind of to be quiet and just go along with the punches, because I don't think we were able to vote until 63? Or
that's about right. That's okay. About right.
Okay.
But what was happening in the home was women were either staying home or they worked jobs that were considered women's work. And they did chores that were considered women's work. So what I mean by that is There was a lot of sewing and cooking and domestic kinds of activities that women participated in, but also if they went to work, they were probably teachers and nurses and societal designated jobs.
Roles. Mm-hmm.
So if a woman were to step outside of that, then it wasn't popular. And even the right to vote for women went to jail for that. They were beaten for that.
Oh,
absolutely. They, like during the suffragette period,
mm-hmm.
Women were thrown in jail. When they started to loosen those restrictions, they were opened up to women who owned property.
Only?
Only. So the right to vote was it was incremental steps that were small, and as society would have women be seen.
What about education?
Well, the same thing was true. Women were expected to do the domestic kinds of jobs. So if you tried to step outside the home, no matter what you did, whether it was education or work, then there was pushback. And so over time, women had to progress into the places that you see them now.
That's really interesting. Okay. So now let's go to the 70s. Still kind of the same situation. The roles in terms of what women could, fields that they could work in changed a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you're laughing because you were in one of those roles.
Yes, I can speak to that from personal experience because I became a carpenter, a journeyman carpenter, and that was a tough situation to deal with. Society was changing, and there were a lot of single women households, and there were women who had to support their families. But there were also governmental changes that said women had to be in certain places, or government funding could not support those places. So I became a journeyman carpenter in 1976, and that came about because I was pregnant, I had a daughter, and so I was at Coppin State University, Coppin State College at the time, and I had to leave that because I needed to make some money to support my child. And it came up very quickly for me that there was this opportunity for women to work in what they called non-traditional work. And you didn't know what non-traditional work was until you went to these places and tried to apply. And so women became not only carpenters, but electricians, brick masons. They operated cranes, but there were very few women on the job. So I went through an apprenticeship with the Baltimore Joint Apprenticeship Committee. And in that apprenticeship, in my class, there were 2 women. And there was a class before my class, but there were probably as many women in that class too. So we were coming on very slowly. And I found myself on jobs where it was 350 men and me, but I had to command respect. And I can say that I was rather small in stature, so I had to have a big mouth, and I had to be kind of aggressive in my behavior so that they wouldn't think that I was a pushover. And I had situations where that were not so wonderful. I remember working at Arundel Mills Mall. And at Arundel Mills Mall, there were spotter pots, and that's how you relieved yourself when you had to go. There were spotter pots there. So men on jobs can be big boys, and they had a tendency to burn the spotter pots down as a joke.
Really?
They would play, and they would burn them down. So this happened on that job, and I had to go to the restroom, and I knew that the spider pot had been burned down, so I went to my shop steward and I said, well, they burned it down, so just so you know, I do the same thing your mother does. Because like I said, I couldn't be soft about my approach.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see in his eyes that the light went on because he didn't think about me before that. So
talk about making it plain.
So the men could go to the men's room inside the building that we were building. We were building Macy's in Arundel Mills. So that restroom was operational. But as you go into that restroom, your urinals are on the left as you walk in, and then the stalls are on the right. And so when I had to go, I just got in line with them. And so the embarrassment on all these men, they didn't know what to do with themselves. But I'm like, if I got to go, I'm going. So the shop steward said, okay, we're going to allow you to outfit the ladies' room in the building. So that was my job, to bring the ladies' room operational, because they just couldn't take me just getting in line and going where they had to go.
Wow.
So yes, I had a lot of struggles. Some of the opportunities were good, but each job was different. I know a young lady who was, actually she was one of my classmates. She had a very negative approach to the men, and so one day they put a rat in her toolbox, a dead rat in her toolbox. So it's all how you handle yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's all how you relate to people. So some of those same rules still apply. You know, like if you can approach people with the way you want to be treated, then you can get treated that way.
So I don't think we've arrived quite yet, but we're getting better. But I could probably imagine that pay equity was an issue then, or did you find that was a problem?
In that situation, because it was a union job,
okay.
I was paid the same as men.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons why I went there, because the pay was higher, and it came incrementally because it was a 4-year apprenticeship, so each year I would get a raise. And so I was able to make a living for my family that was equal to a man's wages. And so I graduated in 1976, and that's when I was able to make the same money as a man.
Okay. So once you graduated the apprenticeship, did you just go to different jobs that were run by unions, or did you just branch into your own business?
Well, I did union jobs for quite a few years. Some of those jobs were scary. Because of the situations that you find yourself in. Not it's the danger of the equipment and the danger of the setting. So I've been in some dangerous situations. But also, one of the reasons they like to keep me around is because concrete walls are supported by rebar, a network of steel rods that are tied together with wire. And so there's probably very small distance between the rebar and the form that the concrete will be poured into. So sometimes that rebar was not tied, and they would send me down there in that space because they couldn't go themselves. You know, a lot of the construction workers had a lot of big bellies, and they ate a lot of craziness for lunch and break and all of that. And so they were very big guys. So I got, they would measure my width, my thickness to see if I can fit in places. And so that happened to me a lot.
So they would just send you down? They
would send me in places that they knew they couldn't fit, but they knew that certain things had to be done.
And to maintain code.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that.
That sounds fun, though.
It was fun because I was in places all day by myself. So some of these places, well, it's just that if you're not out there in the midst of the men, then it's a more peaceful environment it was for me. But I did have other environments that were good. Like I worked the 95 tunnel, and so that was a federal job, and inside the tubes, it was a series of tubes that would be put together to create the whole roadway. And so when I first started, I would have to go down in these tubes and walk on this rebar with these wires that were tying them up. And I didn't walk on it very well. And so it was scratching my legs up. And so one day I came out of the tube. I said, I can't do this. I'm going to quit. And they were like, no, don't quit. Because if there wasn't a woman on the job, the job would get shut down.
Right. Because
So it wasn't
a federal job.
Right. So it wasn't that these men loved me.
Women and minority.
Yes.
So they checked off too.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and that was my value in a lot of those guys who own homes and boats and all these things. They didn't want their money flow to stop because I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So they allowed me to work in the wood shop, which was a very good experience for me because this wood shop was built out of plywood and plastic. And we had to cut the small wooden pieces that would fit inside the tubes. Different little elements that had to be put inside the tubes in order for like concrete hoses to go down or safety issues, stuff like that. So we would spend our days cutting material, and ultimately they were 22 tubes that put that roadway together from the Fort McHenry side to the Lehigh side, where cars would come out of the tunnel.
Wow. So were you one of one during that whole project?
No,
Or
there were like 4 women on that job that I can remember, and but I was the double. The other women were white, so they would make sure that I would stay on the job.
Wow, what an achievement. I don't think I'll drive through that tunnel and feel the same anymore. Kudos to all 4 of you guys on the project, because I would have never thought, So now, like when I go through, I think, oh my goodness, let me hurry up because I don't want to go underwater. But now that I know women were involved, I feel...
Yeah, you can brave up. Because we wouldn't let anything happen to you, just like we don't want it to happen to us.
Yes, I feel a little better there.
Yeah.
So then you moved on to teaching.
Yes, I did. And that's where you and I met.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why I went on to teaching. Because I told you some of the jobs were dangerous. So the last job I worked on before I came into teaching was where the light rail hub is, where the light rail cars live, like above North Avenue. There's like a garage for those cars. And at the time when we were building that, the space between 83 and whatever was there before, I can't remember, was for me very close, because they would swing loads over, and the cranes would pick up heavy loads like steel and like 20-foot lengths of steel rebar, and they would pick it up in a bundle and they would swing it over this way and that way. You have to get out of the way of that. Mm-hmm. And the cranes were so high you really couldn't even see the person. And sometimes you would have to signal those cranes. They could see you, but that wasn't my job, and sometimes I did end up doing that job. But it was a muddy situation. It was very muddy and very sticky mud. And so if you had to move, you had to walk out of this mud, and the boots were too big and all of this. So it was very scary for me that I couldn't maneuver easily in that space. Mm-hmm. So that was it for me. Mm. I was definitely done with all of that by then. That heavy construction, I was done with that.
Well, I think it served you well.
It did.
It did.
It did. I'm blessed by everything that I've done in my life. I've done a lot of things in my life, and I'm blessed by all of them.
Amen.
But what that allowed me to do was then, when I looked for work again, I ended up at Delaware Valley School of Trades, where I met you. And there I taught how to build a house. And so that was interesting too, because my knowledge of building a house came from side work that I did with other guys, like renovation and in the school, of course, there was a renovation program, there was electricity, there was plumbing, and so being with those guys, that was an even better situation because we all became like a bit of a family.
A big family.
And it was very comfortable, and I received a lot of help from the gentleman there, and everyone. I remember getting my first computer from the president of the school, his son, who would come around all the time, because I would bring my son to work, and he was 3 years old, but he could read, and so they would take him off for the day and just have him reading and whatever, and they gave him a computer, so that was our first computer. So a lot of wonderful things happened with people in that interaction, and people who are still my friends today.
Yay! So I'm going to try to parallel. So I worked, of course, in the office part of that whole operation, and administrative workers, we all have our own battles, but they're that much different than yours in terms of being a woman. So it was popular years ago because there was no law to protect women that were objectified in so many different ways in order to gain or maintain employment that people in office settings had to deal with. Because your field was more male dominated, did you find yourself ever in a situation where you felt like someone made you feel less than?
Oh yes, absolutely. Sometimes, and it was really from the men on the job site who were part of the crew. And one of the things I would hear is, I'll pay you to spend the day with me. Or one guy said, I'll buy you a typewriter and a ream of paper if you don't come back anymore.
So when did the laws stand up and protect us? Do you remember when it had to?
I think that probably was more so in the 80s. And heading toward the 90s. It was not, when they first allowed women to come in, it still wasn't the level of protection that we needed. It still wasn't, men could say things to you where now
they better not,
and they know they better not. But before, they could get away with saying things to you. I also felt unprotected one time when I was in the union because I had a shop steward on that same tunnel job. He supported me very well. Like in the beginning, I would have to buy tools, and tools are expensive, so he would occasionally give me a tool, and I would buy tools like every payday. I would buy what I needed, but I could get along with a certain amount of something before, like when you first get started, you get a tool belt, you get a hammer, certain things that you can get away with until you can buy more. But he would help me, and he would also spend a lot of time in the wood shop that I told you about. But he didn't have to work. He had to make sure that the union rules were being upheld. And so he had some kind of a legal problem with the union. They were trying to find out whatever he was doing that was not legal, that I didn't know anything about. If he was doing something wrong, I didn't know anything about it. That wasn't a conversation for he and I. So they had a hearing. And they had it in our union hall, which was out in Essex. And it was one of the scariest situations I've ever been in, because a lot of the men during that time in that local were KKK and proud of it. So I had to deal with that situation as well. And so each of us stood in line and waited our turn to go into this hearing. And so ultimately I'm in this room by myself with these guys who I could feel. I could feel the tension. I could feel the hate that they had for me without even knowing me. And these were some of my union brothers. But they asked these questions and I answered them honestly. But I looked around the room and I felt like, okay, I came in this door and I see that door over there, and I said, I'm in here. They could take me out that door and I could never be seen or heard from again. And so that was a very tough situation. And so when I left the room, they didn't even let me leave totally. They said that she's lying. So I'm like, why did I even come here? Except for this guy supported me, and so I had to support him. And I didn't know that it was going to be such a hot temperature in that room. So that was probably the scariest situation that I've been in. Besides height on some of these jobs, wearing safety belts and hanging off of steel and all of these things. It was a lot, but I'm a bit of a tomboy even now, so it wasn't out of the realm of logic for me to try this whole thing out.
So do you think that career still exists for some women today?
Absolutely, but it's different now. I remember a house that I used to live in on Maple Park Avenue off of Forest Park Avenue. And there was some road work going on where some of the work was happening directly in front of my house. And so there was this young woman, and I left that house about 10 years ago. So during this time, and close to the time that I was leaving, this young woman was on the job out there. So I went outside and we got to talking. And she said, yeah, and I'm one of the first female carpenters in the state. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, somebody is selling you a bill of goods. So she said, no. I said, wait right there. And I still have my little journeyman certificate that's miniature laminated card that they gave us. And I just handed it to her and let her see so that she would know the truth. That
Deborah Mason is a trailblazer.
And not only that, I don't want you walking around telling people that when state of Maryland has a history of not only me, but other women who have gone into all of the trades. And you're not the first. And you're nowhere near the first. So I think women have a tendency to go in. There are more women in these fields now, but I think they go in slowly. And I think the whole gay and lesbian movement, where women are feeling
male
masculine in their ways, this is a place they can gravitate to. So I feel that there are more women, but I think it's still spread out. But I also think that women are doing it privately. They're not going the union route as much. They're saying, yeah, wherever they get their skills from, they say, yeah, I can open a business and I can do these jobs. And I think that's the way it has transitioned to.
Or they're owning these outfits.
Yes,
and
yes.
Yeah.
But they're getting the skills, and now schools are giving these skills, high schools. And there's still some private schools like where I taught and you were in administration. There's still some businesses out there like that.
Really?
There's one up in Security Mall. I forget
just tractor trailer driving.
No, there is. And actually, one of the instructors that was at our school was at the school at Security. I forget the name of the school, but I heard that he was there. So
yeah, we won't mention the name because they're not sponsoring us right now. But you guys know where it is.
Yes. So, but yes, women are still going. I think the problem that we're not feeling it is because everything is happening in silos.
Mm-hmm.
It's all spread out, and we don't know who we are.
You just said something really big. We don't know who we are. Let's just take it back to women. We don't know who we are. We are so powerful. We are the most powerful creatures here on earth.
We absolutely are.
And we need to own it. We need to own it. We need to get, a female governor one day. We need to get a president one day. We really need to own it and make moves that way and continue to make history, of course. But also what we've owned and what we're doing well in, I read in an article about women being more in leadership roles than men now. So I don't know if that works out in the pay just yet, but in terms of leadership roles, you find more women in roles like that.
And I believe I heard that more women are going to college than men.
Mm-hmm.
So once we got in the door, then we kicked the door down.
We kicked the door down, and we're just going for it.
Right, and I think that's where some of the problem that men have with women. Sometimes they say that we don't have a gentle feeling for them anymore. That's not true. We're not trying to get rid of men,
mm-hmm.
or to just not be involved with men anymore. We are just trying to be ourselves unapologetically, with boldness and with the energy that we have.
And I think once anybody understands that, they can embrace that. Like, who wouldn't want that for an individual?
Absolutely.
To truly live an abundant life.
Absolutely. Well, we've supported men
All
in
these
their
years.
boldness
Yep.
forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if they could only.
Yeah, as I hear different shows where they talk about, women making money, they want to wear the pants in the house, and, they don't need a man. We don't need a man for that. Just, if you want to make a memo to yourself, note to self, we never, I won't say never, because pre-2000s, maybe, let's go back to 60s, 50s. Let's even go back to 30s. The role of the woman was to be the homemaker, and the man was the breadwinner. That's just what it was. Roles didn't reverse. It became more true to the sense of the word and what God created, and that's being a helpmate.
Yes.
So now we are equipped to be a
bigger help. A bigger help.
So it's not that we don't need men.
Mm-hmm.
We've always needed
Yes,
men.
and we want men.
I do.
Yes, we do. People, like God didn't make us to be a single entity.
No.
There would be no population if that were the case. So we do love our men, but we love ourselves, and that's, I think, we have been given permission to love ourselves out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important to me for women to do. Because the idea of being a helpmate is not described by being subservient.
Correct.
And that's not, and so we don't want to be that anymore. We understand the way the world works, and we want to participate fully in it. And that's all that we want. To put something on someone, to call names, or to be negative against, that's not the goal.
Never has been.
Never has been.
No. So, Miss Deborah Mason, you got a lot going on.
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about you. I want to celebrate all the things that you've accomplished. We talked about your carpentry work, but you've embarked upon a whole different career.
Absolutely. Well, I'm back in school now at the age of 72, and I'm happy and blessed to be that. I'm going to MICA right now, Maryland Institute College of Art, to become a curator. And a curator actually helps people to have access to art. So let us say there's an artist out there and all he wants to do is do his work. How does it get shown? That's the curator's job, giving the public access to that artist's work. But there are other ways to do it. It could be programs. It could be a lot of different ways that curators can help the public access art. A lot of people say they don't understand art. And I think it's because elitism for centuries has tried to keep those they think are less than away from art.
So it intimidates them.
So it intimidates them. It creates a barrier. And so people say, I don't understand art. Well, yes, you do, because if you like it, or if you have an opinion about it, what you see, then you understand art. Because it's an expression from one artist to the viewer. So that's the job that I'm taking on now. So yes, I'm in my first year at MICA, and it's been a whirlwind. It has been a whirlwind. And the reason why I initially got into art is because my deceased husband, Deborah Mason, was a painter and a muralist in Baltimore City, and he did over 35 murals indoors and out. And I assisted him with a lot of that work. I was his model. I was his documentarian. I was apprenticed. Sometimes I had to pick up a paintbrush. I had helped lay those walls out. And so he did a grid system on the walls. And so you'll see 2- and 3-story walls that have images up there. And you say, how did that happen? Well, he used a grid system that people don't even use much anymore today. Now they do projection. But those walls had to be laid out. Every inch on his drawing was a foot on the wall.
Wow.
So
are any of the murals still up?
We're down to like 3, I think, 2 or 3, because the buildings are crumbling, and so the walls are coming down. But there's one at Reisterstown and Virginia Avenue. It's called Reflections. And I have found out that there is a grant available that I have to apply for that can put that mural back the same way that it was created. So, for example, on Cary and Cumberland Street, the Baltimore Wall of Pride, it was redone by his mentee, Ernest Shaw. But it was not put back the same way because Ernest told me, said, I can't do what he did. He could do something and he could do it in another way. And so this time, when the wall was prepared, because that's the third, what's there now is the third iteration of that wall. So Pontella worked on it twice, and now his mentee, Ernest Shaw, put up this last iteration. And as a result, to honor Pontella, his image is on that wall now.
Beautiful.
So it is beautiful. And so my involvement with art, also I was a dancer for, probably before I met you. Yes. I was in the African dance company that I was in for 10 years. And I performed around Baltimore and up and down the East Coast. And so art has always been in me. And so now that all the children are grown and my husband has gone on to glory, it's my turn. And so this is where I want to be. This is where I found myself and a place that I feel comfortable.
And I can tell because you have a glow. And it's not because of the orange. You know, you are in a place and you're totally in touch with it, and I can just see it all over you. It brings you joy.
It does bring me joy.
And I think that's one important takeaway. You know, we as women, we talked about off camera about beauty. And as the Word of God says, beauty fades, right? But if you focus on the inside and you do the things that you love and you excel in the things that you love and you're around the people that you love, beauty is always there.
Oh, absolutely.
And you motivate me because you have enrolled into college at the age of 72. That's a big deal. And not only have you motivated me, I'm sure there are countless others.
Well, I thank you for that. And I will say that I'm not the only one. There are, like I met a woman last year at MICA who she's about my age, and she was going to school. And then there's another person in my class that's in her 50s that is there as well. So all we have to do is give ourselves permission to live with purpose and
it's
to
not a
find that
prescription
thing.
for that. It's for forgiving yourself for feeling guilty for pouring into yourself.
Yes. That doesn't take away from what you have for others.
Right. It doesn't.
And if you don't do it, I think you are disobeying God, because you are a creature of God, and He's given you all of this. He's given you all of the abundant feelings. You know, a lot of times people are looking for abundance,
Mm-hmm.
but the abundance is not necessarily money in your pocket or in your bank account. And I think that's one of the things that people get wrong about abundance. You could enjoy grass. Grass is you're seeing it on a lawn. There are a million blades of grass out there, and if you love the color green, then there's your glory. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people don't understand that abundance is many things, and some of them are in you, and that you have to participate with them so that you are not defining your joy in life by your children, your husband, you know, all of the people outside of yourself that you love. That's not the only place to find that joy.
Right.
And you must cultivate the joy that's inside of yourself, because that's the gift that God gave only to you. So how do you honor that?
You asking me?
That's
Or-
rhetorical.
Oh,
That's
it's
rhetorical.
okay.
But I am asking you. But I know that you are. I know about you.
Well, you honor it, but it's funny because you don't exactly know how to honor it. Like, the way you honor it today may not be the way that you choose to honor it next week, next month, or whatever. But the point of it is to honor it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because we all change.
Oh, yes.
Or, you know, a project ends and we're on to the next thing. You know, you're finished raising your kids, you have an empty nest, now what? So, yeah, you're 100% correct.
But you actually have to ask yourself, or you have to, you know, it's always been there. Whatever it is you love has always been there, because I feel like I am the person I always was, even from a child. So this is just a child living in a grown-up body with a grown-up mind, and
Not having to ask for permission.
not asking for permission, not caring what anyone thinks about you. That's one thing about age that I wish everyone could have, is when you get a certain age, you don't care about a lot of things. All the things that you cared about before, they fall away because they're not important, and that's what you find out, that they're not important. And the most important is you. But when, for example, you said a project ends, we're still growing. We all grow. And we might even grow backwards. We might grow to that thing, that whatever dream that was when you were a little girl and you didn't get to do that, you might grow back to that.
And that's okay.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's the best,
Yeah.
because it's no longer a dream. It's real. So
It is a real thing, because I'm learning to swim now.
I did that a couple years
So,
ago. Yeah.
I'm learning to swim now.
Yeah, but it's never too late. It's never too late. And so I am going to implore all women
Do it.
to look inside yourself and see who that little girl is, or see if you learn something new over time that you might want to touch or participate with or hang out with. Just do it
And make some history.
and make some history for yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. And Shawnee, you know, you can ask me anything, and I'm there before you finish talking.
Okay, so next week we're going to be talking about. No, I'm just joking, but I really, really love you, and I
you
appreciate
as
you
well.
taking time out to hang out with me.
My absolute pleasure.
So, do you have anything next? You're working on this show. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, well, presently, myself and my partner, Aleem Allison, curated a show for the Elizabeth Telford Scott Initiative at Carpenter State University.
Another women history maker.
Yes, yes. She was a quilter. She's the mother of artist Joyce Scott. And so her artwork is phenomenal in that as she got older, that's when she started showing her work with the push from her daughter to get out there and show the world what you can do. So her quilts are phenomenal. She uses mixed media. She uses materials that you would not think would be in a quilt, like rocks.
Wow. And where will this show be?
The show is at Carpenter State University from now until April the 27th.
Is there a fee?
No, there's not a fee, but there is. Gallery hours are Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday from 1 to 5. And please go there and see the show. Not because I was a curator, but you need to see what other phenomenal women are doing. And right now, I am curating a show with my class at the UB Blake Center, which opens this Friday evening. Our opening is from 6 to 8, and it's called This Is Not Your Grave. And the show is about loss and healing, or trauma and healing. So if you stay alive through your trauma or your loss, then over time you're going to heal. So these are artists who are expressing trauma and healing.
Wow. So UB Blake Center, grand opening this Friday, and what are the hours?
Well, the opening is 6 to 8 p.m. this Friday, but their gallery hours, I would suggest you go on
the UB Blake website.
ublakecenter.org, and I'm not quite sure that is the correct website, but you can certainly Google UB Blake Center, and you will find their gallery hours, and they're located 847 North Howard Street.
Awesome. So I won't be there this Friday, but I will be there.
Okay, please do.
And what is it called again?
This Is Not Your Grave.
This Is Not Your Grave. Wow.
Well, you know, as my girlfriend's mother used to say, you can't die every time it's convenient.
I like that.
And I use that a lot because a lot of times we feel like I'm going through something that's so horrible that I just want to die. Well, God's not taking you. Yes, God's not going to take you until you have your appointment on His book. That's when you go. But there is healing. And so if you can get through the trauma, then you can get on the other side of your feelings about it.
That's really deep.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Now for the Elizabeth Talford Scott initiative, we are having a quilt square making workshop on March 30th from 1 to 3 at Carpenter State University, and it's taught by my best friend, Wendy Blackwell Fortune, who she and I have worked together for years creating programming for children's museums.
Wow.
So this is like one more time to create a program for the public to come and enjoy. And you can find that on Eventbrite. It's story quilts.
Okay. And is the location still going to be UB Blake Center, or
no? That one is at Carpenter State University in the gallery. Yes.
Okay. Oh, wow. So I'm going to be busy in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Please do. And for everybody, there's a lot of artwork in Baltimore City and a lot of venues, and people are creative, and you are creative, and you may be inspired by something that you see. So get out there and see it.
Get out there and see it. Join me. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up, and I want to give, again, a special thanks to Miss Deborah Mason. I lovingly call her Debbie or Ma, but
mostly Ma.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. For women, I hope it empowered you. It empowered me for sure. We are trailblazers in our own right. So go out there and make some history. I'm Sean Monet. This is Hidden Parts, the podcast. You can find me on all social media outlets: Facebook, The Hidden Parts Podcast; Instagram, The Hidden Parts Podcast; YouTube is Sean Monet TV. Please subscribe, like, but more importantly, share. thank you once again, and see you next time. I'm so happy to see you. It's probably been several years.
Oh, more than several.
I know. We were at the mall or somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've always been so inspired by you.
Thank you.
And even though it's Women's History Month, I still think that you are Woman of the Year in my book.
Thank you.
You've done so much
you.
and you're doing so much.
Thank you. I have to say that I've always respected you and the way you present yourself to the world. And for me, you are a Woman of the Year as well. I want to tell you about something I used to do. I used to have a Woman of the Year. Every year I would select a woman just within myself. I might have heard about her in the news or somewhere where I was inspired by this person. So one of the women that I chose as a Woman of the Year was astronaut Mae Jemison. And the reason is because if that's not an out-of-the-box kind of thought to have and therefore to carry out, I just respected her so much.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of bravery to say, okay, I'm going into outer space. Like that is not an out-of-the-box thought for me. I can go into outer space.
It's not an average thought.
That's not an average
When
thought.
I was growing up, I don't think that was even my thought path. But I'm happy she did it.
I am too, because I remember them showing pictures from outer space one year. I don't think it was her flight, but just looking down at the Earth and being able to see outlines of the country with streetlights and those kinds of things. Like, I can't imagine allowing my body to be projected into space that fast and that far and thinking that's an ordinary feeling to have. So I have out-of-box behavior myself, so just taking on some of that inspiration is very important to me. So I look in my life, I look at the women in the world, and I become inspired by them, and that's really all it is, just talking to myself, telling myself, look at her.
It's the same for me, and should be for you, because I use it to grow.
That's what I use it for.